Just whenever we thought that things couldn't get much worse, things get much, much worse. Carvana has been in the center of a number of different controversies throughout the better part of 2022. And just as the dust is beginning to settle, things once again began to be shaken up, this time surrounding their dealer's license. Now, for those of you who aren't familiar with Carvana or the controversy surrounding the company in the last 6 months to a year, let me briefly explain. Carvana is a used car dealership. Now, you may know of them as a car vending machine company, but let's not get it twisted. They are at their core a used car dealership. And that is totally okay. In fact, they have grown to become one of the largest used car dealerships in the entire country. Over the years, Carvana has become a massive company and a Wall Street darling. You see, Carvana absolutely exploded during the pandemic, and their stock price went from $29 per share in March of 2020 to over $350 per share in August of 2021. In the process of doing this, their revenue grew and they became a household name. And the founders and leadership team of Carvana made an absolute ton of money. But you guys know the saying, what comes up must come down. And in the case of Carvana, there has been an absolute epic rise with this company, but there has been an almost just as epic fall. And over the last year, there has been a number of controversies surrounding a few key factors within the Carvana company. First and foremost is some major questions and controversy surrounding their leadership and founding team. You see, Carvana was founded by Ernest Garcia III, who's the son of Ernest Garcia II, who is a successful entrepreneur, founder and CEO of DriveTime Automotive. Carvana was actually founded as a subsidiary to DriveTime Automotive, but it was eventually spun off into its own company, which Ernest Garcia III has been running ever since. Now, I'm not going to go into a ton of depth into this video about Ernest Garcia III and Ernest Garcia II because I have covered this in a ton of depth in a previous video I made about 6 weeks ago. I will include a link down to this in the description below. But very long story short, despite the fact that Ernest Garcia III is running Carvana, while Ernest Garcia II is running DriveTime Automotive, and despite the fact that Carvana is publicly traded, the two Ernest Garcias are able to run Carvana like it's a privately held family institution. This is because guidelines that were outlined prior to Carvana's IPO, essentially giving Ernest Garcia III and Ernest Garcia II an insane amount of voting power. This means that the duo is basically able to do whatever they want because of the fact that they have majority rule of the company, despite the fact that it is publicly traded. Again, this doesn't even scratch the surface. If you're interested in learning more, I will include a link in the description below. Another major issue with Carvana is the way in which they make their money. You see, Carvana isn't just a used car dealer, they're also a financial arm for people who are wanting to buy used cars. But the problem with Carvana isn't the fact that they finance many of their buyers' cars. This is actually standard practice amongst dealerships. The problem is the types of loans that Carvana issues and the borrowers that they issue them to. You see, a large portion of the loans that Carvana issues out are subprime auto loans, which are auto loans given to borrowers with poor credit or poor credit history. These loans, though beneficial to Carvana in small numbers, can be incredibly risky because of the fact that they have a much higher chance of defaulting. And the problem with Carvana is the fact that they've been issuing too many of these loans and they've been holding onto them for far too long. They've been over leveraging themselves by lending out subprime debt, and this is like building a house on a lofty foundation. It's not a matter of if it's going to come crashing down, it is simply a matter of when. And with a recession looming, as well as auto loan delinquencies and repossessions increasing, this spells a ton of trouble for Carvana. Now, this is just a really broad overview summary of what's currently going on with Carvana. Again, if you're interested in learning about this in more depth, I made like a 20-minute long video a few months ago, and I will include a link to those two videos down in the description below. But this pretty well brings you up to speed with where we are today in July of 2022. One of the more recent and ongoing issues that Carvana has been experiencing is in regards to their dealer's license. In fact, their dealer's license has been put on probation in North Carolina and was on suspension in May in Illinois. This is due to complaints regarding the company's alleged failure to properly transfer titles to buyers and misuse of out-of-state temporary registration permits. According to a spokesperson with the Secretary of State of Illinois, Carvana would issue an Illinois temporary vehicle registration, and once the registration expired after 90 days, they would allegedly replace them with temporary registrations from other states. This is not allowed. In Illinois, title must be transferred within 20 days of purchase. Carvana has been at least 4 to 6 months behind in issuing titles. Now, this was back in May, and shortly after this suspension was implemented, a stay was ordered by an Illinois judge, basically putting this suspension on hold. In response to this stay, Carvana could continue operating their dealer's license in the state of Illinois, but they had to follow some strict guidelines. These strict guidelines included not being able to issue temporary registration permits or license plates, and because of this, Carvana would have to go through third-party providers to issue these. They also had to post a $250,000 bond. Things seemed to be looking up for Carvana. Their suspension was lifted, they were able to sell cars, they sorta kinda saved face in the process of all of this, but that reprieve was short-lived because as we see here today in July of 2022, the suspension has been enacted once again, this time because Carvana didn't follow the strict guidelines that they were supposed to follow. As of July 18th, 2022, according to the Illinois Secretary of State, a temporary suspension order has been reinstated for misuse of issuing out-of-state temporary registration permits and for failing to transfer titles. And during this reinstated suspension, Carvana is not allowed to sell any vehicles in the entire state of Illinois. According to the Secretary of State's office, a handful of the guidelines that Carvana violated included issuing temporary registration plates of another state to Illinois residents, issuing temporary registration plates without going through a licensed remitter, failing to process title and registration paperwork through the Secretary of State upon sale of vehicle in Illinois. Now, this is not a good look for Carvana. The fact that this exact same thing happened a couple of months ago, they were given a warning, had a stay put into place, only for them to violate that stay and the guidelines associated with it, it just simply isn't good. I think it shows the judge and state officials that Carvana really doesn't care what rules they have to follow. They simply want to make profit and they want to do it in their own way. Carvana is so incredibly interesting because of the fact that, like I mentioned in the intro, on the surface, this company seems like a really solid company with a really solid idea behind it. But as you begin to peel back the curtain, you realize that the company to its core is an absolute disaster. The dominoes have begun to fall, and we look at a lot of the things that I discussed in this video, as well as my previous videos that I've covered on the topic, and there are a lot of red flags popping up all over the place. The fact is, if Carvana can't sell cars, they can't make money. And not only does this not look good from a legal perspective, but it also does not look good from a customer's perspective either. This is not only going to hurt Carvana's sales in the short and long term, it's also going to be the beginning of the dominoes beginning to fall for their dealer's license throughout the entire country. But you guys, I wanted to make this video because Carvana is a topic that I've covered a number of times on this channel, and given as though the suspension was just recently enacted, I wanted to make sure to cover it while this news was still new. But as we learn more information and as new things progress within the story, I will definitely be updating you guys on the channel, so make sure to stay tuned. If you have any questions, comments, if you have anything to add, I would love to hear it, so make sure to leave a comment down below. And while you guys are at it, make sure to hit the like button, hit the subscribe button, and hit the notification bell, and I'll see you guys in the next video.